I'm Marshall Kozloff. Welcome back to the Realignment. Hey guys, as you can see, we're out here in California, Simi Valley at the Reagan Presidential Library. Me and the team flew out to record a bunch of really great podcasts to wrap up the year with folks at the Reagan Defense Forum. Spoke to VCs, technologists, CEOs, and of course policymakers as we answer the big questions that really define the moment, everything from deterrence to defense production, and of course, how the military can meet the challenges of the 21st century. Hope you all enjoy these conversations. We've got plenty more of them coming. Hey YouTube, Marshall here. As you can tell from that quick video intro, I recorded this conversation with Mike Slagh, Navy vet and CEO of Shift, a platform that builds a way for veterans to transition back into the civilian workforce at the Reagan Defense Forum a few weeks ago. Just to give some quick context, this conversation with Mike is about not only his work at Shift, but how he thinks we can use this concept of American civil military fusion to address big challenges in the defense sector and other issue areas that we're concerned about as well. A bunch of really interesting conversations actually happened at the Defense Ventures Summit, which Shift put on earlier in the year back in November. So I'll be sure to link a couple of those as well. People should definitely check those out. Hope you all enjoy this conversation and look forward to doing more of these conversations into the next year. Mike Slagh, welcome to the Realignment.
Thank you, Marshall. Longtime listener, first-time caller.
Yeah, and I am a recent binger, I think is the way I'll put it, because I saw the Defense Ventures Summit. The videos were incredible. The production was great. We're going to have a link in the show notes. Everyone needs to really check it out. But I think the first thing folks are going to notice when they check out the Defense Ventures Summit is they're going to be confused by what the org you run, Shift, actually is. Because, shift.org, I always thought it was like a nonprofit. Normally, like, this stuff isn't relevant, but what actually is Shift, given the kind of confusing nomenclature?
Yeah, venture-backed technology company, Delaware C Corp. Our lead investors, Andreessen Horowitz, and we've got great support from a bunch of other VCs. Honestly, I really like the name Shift, and there was a car company back when I was registering the domain name when we got off the ground. But that's sort of the about the name. But Shift, how we think about it is, we started as this veteran hiring company that essentially makes it really easy for veterans to transition into technology companies. I love startups, and I spent time in the Navy, and before that, I helped get a tech company off the ground. I always knew I wanted to get back into sort of the tech ecosystem. But my time in the service, I was always struck. It was like you couldn't overstate how narrow someone's perception was. What they could do after the service. And these are people that I was like, these are the people you want on your side when you're trying to start something hard or do something that hasn't been done before. And so to build more pathways for veterans to break into technology companies really was how we got our start. And as we placed veterans at VC firms and VC-backed companies, that's really the sort of the origin story of how Defense Ventures is born.
It's interesting. I'll just ask. This will be a no particular order episode. This is just me asking everything. I'll probably phone it in and give us like Mike Slagh on everything, which is, by the way, listeners, when a podcast calls a podcast titles an episode, that means they really threw everything at the wall and they don't have a coherent whole. But this will be coherent. First question. Better path for a veteran, getting an MBA or joining a tech company or a VC firm? I ask this because I remember back in like 2009, like Forbes or Fortune had like an article. It was basically like reporting for duty. It's like, hey, if you're a veteran, like join an MBA, join like a traditional company, do like the rotational track thing. MBAs in the tech world are kind of in a weird in-between space. Sometimes they're helpful, sometimes they're not.
For sure.
What's your answer to this dynamic?
I think, you always hear the advice when you're transitioning out of the military, hey, your first job isn't your forever job. You don't have to necessarily figure it out right away. Anytime anybody tries to go radically cross-industry, like, I was in healthcare, now I want to be in education, or I was in government, now I want to be in technology. Like, it really takes some time to figure out, where do I fit? How do my skills translate? What can I do that's valuable in the workforce? And obviously the workforce is like, it's changing really fast right now. But, the thing that, I feel pretty strongly about that kind of cuts against that sort of common, you don't have, your first job doesn't have to be your forever job. Like, the people that know what they want in the world, like, they just typically end up having a higher chance of actually achieving that. And so the folks, like, I would never knock somebody for going to a top MBA program. If it's time to really figure out, like, where do I fit, what do I want to do? I want to get sort of exposure to a bunch of different professionals across industry. You can really do that to build a great network, and it can work out great for you. But the folks, a lot of times that happens, or that sort of trepidation to jump into the workforce, is because when you are in the military, like the private sector, the civilian world, like, it feels like a speeding train. Yeah. It's just like flying by, and you have no idea what the norms are, what even the type of projects you'd work on, or how those projects get done. Like, what's a balance sheet, and like, what's the company's goals? How is it organized? And so, one of the things I've always felt strongly about is, like, any little taste of private sector experience while you're on active duty service, it can like radically melt away a lot of those anxieties you feel about the outside world. I was stationed in the Navy in San Diego for my whole time, and that's like a very commercial, like a lot of like private sector activity happening out in town. But for the most part, like, people in the military are in parts of America where, like, the government could buy the most land for the least amount of money, and it can't overstate how siloed the military experience is. And so any little bit of private sector experience, it can really go a long way in helping you figure out, oh, this is who I want to be, or this is what I want to go after. And if you know that, especially right now, and if you're interested in sort of this, I mean, what can only be described as sort of like a Cambrian explosion around defense technology, like, I've sort of like, I left the military. I've been helping, thousands. I mean, our platform has helped tens of thousands of veterans get jobs over the last few years. There's never been a better time where it's so obvious that, like, military embedded expertise, can really help companies that are trying to maximize their potential as partners in the work of DoD. And so, like, that military experience, like, it's so valuable. And it's like, why spend 2 years, like, hanging out and, going to, random, like, themed decade parties when you can just get into it right now and you can start building your path. And so, if you know what you want to do, I would skip the MBA. Long-winded, but I'm talking.
No, but this is the definition of a news you can use section.
All right.
I was just in Oklahoma because my sister-in-law just got promoted to captain. She's in the artillery in the Marine Corps.
Wow.
And she is not thinking this way. So, Hannah, this is all for you.
We got you, Hannah.
Yeah, no, we got you. This is once again very personal news you can use section.
Yeah.
Here's a real question I have for you. So, I've been asking folks, like, what are you doing at the RNDF, Reagan Defense Forum? But for you personally, your presence here is really interesting on a couple levels. So A, it's coming after your big summit, which of course we'll talk about. But B, it's also happening when the broader Silicon Valley position towards defense and national security at an institutional level, maybe not every single individual worker is clearly changing. Like, if this were 2015, 2016, that'd be a little shocking, but obviously, I actually just DM'd you on Twitter saying, hey, like, you're going to be here, right? And you're like, yeah. So give me, like, your version of that, like, why it's not surprising that you're here, but it would have been surprising that someone like you would be here 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think I would frame that through, defense technology, save for a couple of OGs, the Palantir, the SpaceX, the Anduril, and sort of the firms that back them, and a few other, like, success stories, like, hasn't really been considered like a VC backable, VC investable category, even up to, like, I don't know, maybe like 2 years ago. And we can talk about the summit more, but our Defense Ventures Summit, it brings together technologists, founders that want to start companies in the defense space that maybe they weren't called to the mission for the first couple companies, venture capitalists that are interested to do more in the category, and then military members who are really interested in getting acquiring the best technology into the military. Like, there's a lot of companies that they build a great airplane, but you don't want them, like, building the AI technology that like secures the nation, or the cyber technology that, like, secures all the infrastructure. Like, we need, like, the companies that are getting, it's like that's where the innovation is coming from right now. It's technology. It used to come a lot from DoD. I appreciate DARPA giving us the internet, but
the big one.
that's the big one. Yeah, that's the example. We need a few more of those. But so I think that what I can only describe right now is happening is a Cambrian explosion in defense technology, technology that supports safety, national security. Firms are trying to figure out, okay, what's our stance on this? I actually hear from a lot of LPs of VC firms saying, like, hey, who are you looking at right now, or what type of firms are really serious about this? So, like, in some ways, at the intersection of defense and technology through our fellowship, we found ourselves a little bit at the center of the storm. But I was shocked that 110 VC firms showed up at the Defense Ventures Summit. Like, I didn't know there was 110 firms who are even interested in the category, and I've been trying to bring these two worlds together for 4 years. And so that's this at RNDF. It's my first time. I'm trying to soak it in, trying to talk to people, ask other companies, hey, why do you come back? Like, how has the event, sort of changed over the years? There's a lot more startups and VC-backed companies out here than there ever have been. But I think it's I would say that the perception that you talk to a lot of military people, a lot of government folks, and oftentimes, like, they're really like either they've got this problem where there's just like a tremendously low, like, high quality signal to noise ratio. Like, they're getting government people are getting inundated by a bunch of things that aren't the next Anduril, the next Epirus, the next Shield, the next Scale, all this really, like, vibrant, technology industrial base that we are going to need. It's starting to develop. It's just a bunch of noise right now. And so the government, like, and the military, the people that want to actually, like, purchase the best technology in America and the best technology from our allies, their number one problem is connectivity to the other side. And it turns out, for this tidal wave of new founders that are entering the space, new VCs that are entering the space, military veterans who feel like they want to build in this space as well. It's connectivity into the DoD. Like, where do I spend my time? There's 3 million person organization with thousands of people who do, like, commercialization or public-private interface and things like that. And so it's like this. There has to be some sort of comprehensive tech integration in between both sides. We embed military people into startups and VC firms, so they can accelerate their path and be with technologists and understand what good looks like in technology. At the same time, these technologists, they get to work and develop a meaningful relationship with somebody in the military. That may sound like kind of like obviously, but it's like you'd be shocked. Like just we were talking about an example of how, like, at Anduril, they've done a great job of bringing in recent veterans from a bunch of different military communities, special operations, and they have this embedded military expertise where they're just like, oh, the drone's going to break if you take it into this type of environment, or this is a constraint that we're up against, and that's not obvious stuff. And so going back to the MBA example, there's never been a time, at least in the technology sector, where military experience has ever meant more, has been more valued in the workforce, which I think that's like a reprieve for some folks, where it's like veterans in some ways have been treated like as this charity for like 2 decades. And it's, we'll try and bring some vets in and we'll put them in the special program. At least in this sector, those days are over. This is a place where, if you were excellent in your job in the military and for whatever reason you got a family, or you don't want to move around anymore, or you're just ready for something new, I think about this as sort of reframing, retention for the military services. Isn't it great if somebody, if they retire or if they leave service for whatever reason, if they are building the technology companies, if they are the VC firms that are investing in these technologies, those are obviously the people that we want, helping bridge the gap with the Department of Defense. So, bunch of stuff I'm excited about right there, and that's why I'm here, because this is like obviously our RNDF. You look around and it's a different level of seniority. It is in different organizations that maybe they don't communicate so well. It's a bunch of really senior leaders, but this is a place where they come and coordinate. Yeah. And so you see all the service secretaries, all the General Alvin's here, and SecDef is here, CNO is here. It's wild to sort of see that, because that's not what the Defense Venture Summit was about. The Defense Venture Summit was about a bunch of more relatively more junior than 4-star military folks. There's not too many of them, but really people who are desperate to sort of fulfill their potential as technologists in the military, and that kind of means something different today than it did even 6 months or a year ago. But they want the best technology. Like, they're sick of legacy systems and not having the best. Like, it's they don't want to live in the world the way it is right now.
Something I'm curious about, and this is a tension both at your summit, but also in most of the books about the arsenal of democracy back in the 1940s. Bill Knudsen, Henry Kaiser, these are the paragons of who you would imagine a tech founder or a tech VC would want to be in the case of, let's say, a great power conflict. In a lot of these books, they'll even say something like, just as in a book, you'll have a section trying to make a history book relevant for today. And they'll say something like, anyone thinking about how Silicon Valley could be useful to America in the way that the auto industry was useful to America in World War II should read this book, blah, 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 blah. And the pause I always give, because I work in these two worlds, is I understand the direct tie between, once again, Bill Knudsen building up GM and the factory production line. And the central challenge is hey, how do we build a B-24 Liberator in the course of a few days versus a few weeks, which the Nazis and the Imperial Japan can't match? I see how you would translate that to the military when you switch to from autos to Sherman tanks. I don't quite see where a lot of the high-performing tech startup founders I know, incredibly mission-oriented, incredibly accomplished, but these are just fundamentally different challenges. I'd be curious, what your kind of response to this kind of shift in dynamic. Where does SV, as America's top industry, kind of fit into the World War II metaphor? That's a lot, so you don't have to have a perfect reaction. But whenever I hear it, I sort of say, but a SaaS company, and this isn't dunking on SaaS companies, SaaS is not to World War III as auto industry is to World War II, no matter what. Yeah. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, I think that very few people, just 18 months ago, let's just think about all right, I'll try to do this fast, but
this is your platform.
I care a lot about this.
Do what you need to do.
I learned about technology, helping my Grandma Betty, her retail toy business in Lansing, Michigan. She sold, dolls and bears and had this cool community around her. But she got disrupted by Amazon and eBay in the secondary market. And, I helped her get the whole inventory on eBay and basically took this legacy family business that, she operated for 50 years. She's an entrepreneur, and it's the person that I find myself channeling all the time. But in 1999, I learned HTML and CSS, just like you could make good MySpace, pages and stuff, to get online with eBay. And then I took some time and went to the Naval Academy and forgot that part of myself. And then I got the chance, before I actually entered the service, I was in a master's program where I had an awesome professor and a couple of ex-Army Rangers around me who wanted to start a technology company, and I knew HTML and CSS. And I got back online, and in this 10 years later, Ruby on Rails is possible, and you could have a new way to develop web applications. And it was the whole world shifted in 10 years. Then I went into the military, went down the rabbit hole in the Navy for 7 years. I kind of forgot that technologist inside of me again, and I came back up for air in 2017 to start Shift, and all of a sudden, the recursive iteration had happened again, and Rails is great, but there was like serverless backends and all these new JavaScript frameworks, and you could do so much more with so many less people, and so much cheaper, and the barrier to entry for starting a startup was so low. And then you sort of fast forward to just right before ChatGPT. You had some folks sort of doing some cool stuff with Stable Diffusion, and you're like, whoa, maybe this is going to be a new way for creatives to make creative faster and that type of a thing. But at that moment in time, it felt like, okay, no one was talking about AI, no one was paying attention to it. But now we had the chance over the last 18 months to actually experience it and use it, and it's like you can use it, for your homework. You can use it. You can use it for that's the hardest part, is just remembering to incorporate it in your daily workflow. Oh, hey, maybe I'll run this through this and see what I get out. But now we have 10 times or 100 times more people who are really excited about this, and now those recursive iterations in technology, they're really compressing rapidly, and so it's stuff that wasn't even possible 6 months ago, it's possible today. The back end of the Ruby on Rails web application that we made, a machine will tell me how to do that step by step, and I can build the whole, the lightweight version of the app in 6 hours on a Saturday and a Sunday and hack it together. And I'm not, I am not a software engineer, but you get so much leverage from technology. And so it's you don't have to squint very hard to see it. Okay, if the iteration went from 10 years to 7 years to 5 to 2 to 6 months, it's moving so fast. And that's the problem right now, that I actually struggle to communicate that simply to I'm actually not the guy right now. Maybe it'll be someday. I'm not talking to DoD leaders. I'm talking to service members who are trying to come to grips with technology. I'm talking to the E4, the O3, the O5, that maybe they're the only person that cares about the future of cybersecurity for Liberty, or I think that's Liberty now. And you connect them into this network, and all of a sudden they found their people. And now they can go a lot faster, and now they have access to a thing that they didn't have access to before. And so, what's the analogy of what could civil military fusion look like? How can Silicon Valley help DoD? Obviously, it wasn't too long ago when I bet there's still a lot of Americans who look at the tech sector and we're pretty disappointed that some of our leading technology companies shunned the DoD and employees walked out and stuff. Yeah. It's hard to forget the past, but you have to move forward, because now we're witnessing this moment in time where there are so many founders and there are so many VCs who diligently want to build in this space. And so the real thing that DoD can benefit from is tech fluency. There's always been a fluency gap between the public and private sector, no matter what part of the public sector that you're talking about. We just had, in the military, we just had worse software. It wasn't consumer grade. You go to the DMV, it takes longer than it should. But I think I am very, I'm always the optimist, and people are you're an optimist to a fault. But the scary part for the optimist to me is that people do not have their heads around the pace that is accelerating. So it's no longer about the state of the art. It's about the art of the possible. Yeah. The state of the art is this stagnant thing. We've achieved the pinnacle. We've reached the top of the mountain. That's not what technology looks like today. It's an art form, because it changes so rapidly every day. You see something on Twitter and you're like, whoa, now your kids can draw on an iPad and they can make this visualization. Or now you don't need to know how to do all the equations in the spreadsheet. It can really talk you through it step by step. It's radical. I'm very optimistic about the future, but the way that getting more military members, and eventually I could talk to some senior leaders, but it's I talk to hundreds and hundreds of folks who are insufferably frustrated about the pace and the bureaucracy and they leave because the projects that they care about, they don't move forward, or at least they don't move forward fast enough. And so exposing more and more military to technologists and to the art of the possible, it actually, I don't believe it takes that many people moving in the same direction, moving in unison, to create a tremendous impact. Like, there's 3 million people in the DoD. Is it, these technology companies create something incredible with 10 people that touches billions and billions of people. And so getting exposure to at least understanding how to ride the wave, the coming wave, right? That's one way at least, but where else do you want to take it?
Well, no, I mean, I think that's a helpful way to frame it, because the kind of point here is I set up SV kind of unfairly with the framing, because the challenge is not that we need people who could shift a industrial plant in Michigan from autos to B-24s. To your point, an actual huge challenge is that in all of these categories that are increasingly tied into national security, it's moving that quickly.
Can I say one more thing there?
Please.
I mean, I talked about the fluency gap. It's always been there. Yeah. We know that it's like kind of hard to interact with government organizations, or that, anybody who served in the military, they've had their fair amount of it's like fix our computers was a huge thing, where it's like they timed it, and it was like 30 minutes from the time you turn on your computer to when you can send your first email. Like unacceptably, unfathomably bad. Yeah, exactly. Like you can't even put it into words. But because now the pace of technology is accelerating, that means the fluency gap is also accelerating. And what I would ask folks to consider, or what I would ask folks to help me communicate it better, is oftentimes when you talk about the pace of something accelerating, the recursive iterations compressing, the first reaction is fear. Yeah. And I hope they don't take my job. Well, it's not inevitable. AI doesn't take people's jobs. AI takes people who are using AI take people's jobs who are not using it. Countries that leverage AI have tech superiority over countries that can't. And so it's so simple, but the first reaction is fear.
And I think what I would add is what I think the military and civilian SV can add to the set of challenges we're discussing today at RNDF is just the mission-oriented nature. I mean, I think, and I'll ask for the thing that sort of is grinding your gears, but the thing that really grinds my gears right now is that for the past few years, we in DC have had a very specific conversation of, oh, wow, we're way too overly critically dependent on Taiwan for semiconductors. Or for the past
year,
make
a computer in America.
Can't make a computer in America. We still don't know how dependent we are on China when it comes to vaccines and pharmaceuticals if there were a conflict, which the number is very high, but we literally don't know it. Talk about a blockchain use case if there was one. But at the other hand too, we also think of stingers. This isn't even about we could do the techno-babble conversation, but literal things that we could do in the 1980s and 1990s, we can't do because the defense industrial base has collapsed. I do not think civilian leadership, frankly, at DOD has been eloquent on these issues, but also at we have a civilian-led military, has been effective at conveying, here's what we need to do, here's the timeline we need to move. And I think something that SV people are very good at, military otherwise, is, okay, we got X amount of funding, and then we moved it. I was talking to one of my Hudson colleagues, Nadia Shadlow. She helped write the 2017 national security strategy for the country. And a point she made is that her critique of the semiconductor discourse is, we passed the CHIPS Act. And if you actually look at what's happening in the discourse, we say, see, we passed the CHIPS Act. We have tens of billions of dollars going to this problem, and we treat that as the win. And I was like, wait, oh my gosh, that's just you raising X amount of money for Shift. And then we're look at us. We've solved veteran integration into Silicon Valley. But that's actually but that's quite literally, we would never do that in VC. We would never say, it's 2003. Well, Elon's willing to spend his PayPal money on going to Mars, okay, we're good to go. Yeah. But that's actually the way civilian leadership talks about these very specific challenges. So something SV and the military wouldn't also, I think like actual like military wouldn't think that way either. So that's just a clear example of how there are just processes. And I think from both sides, it's unfathomable. I think I've talked to some of my friends are, elected officials, like they don't really know how to think this way. But I think the military also and SV would sort of say like, wait, like, obviously you wouldn't judge by the amount of money you're spending. You would look at the outcome and you look at the plan. So I think so you could answer that, but I also love to hear what the central frustration, because we're both at a bunch of no's. So I have that frustration because I spend time in the military space. Yeah. I spend time in the SV space. So I see this interconnection. You're doing your own version of that too. So like, what is a frustration that you've really developed over the past few years?
Well, I mean, you nailed it on frustration number one. There's very little I can add to that. Think about anybody that, has served, went to Afghanistan or went to Iraq. Many of us are very grateful for that experience. It forged us. Like it made us who we are. It made us want to go fast. It made us, upset in a number of ways. But like you can't argue that you felt like you were operating in a strategy vacuum. There was not a true north. We were not on the same page. I keep hearing the word our near peer adversaries, like the CCP, they don't have a strategy void. Everybody knows their role. Everybody knows what the game plan is. Like it's all public. Like they publish it. Same thing as 500 people moving with a purpose and in unison can accomplish more than 1 million people running around like chickens with their heads cut off. Yeah. And so you nailed it on the
framework is crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it for 2 seconds, you're like, wait, this is kind of crazy.
Yeah. Like we're just not on the same page. Mm-hmm. Like we're not moving in unison. Yeah. And that's part of it. I think the second part of it is just like speed. I hear, I think one of the age-old adages is like, can DOD or government, but DOD, can they innovate in the absence of a crisis? Can they move fast in the absence of a crisis? We used to be able to do things fast, right? But that was because there's this existential threat in front of us.
We've kind of got it now.
That's
and it's sort of
yeah. No, I think, and that's like calling it out and understanding that like the delicacy and the literally how unsafe the world is becoming right now. We're going to have to find out if we can innovate or move fast in the absence of a crisis later, because it is a crisis now.
Yeah. So I think the, big last question here is where, I'll kind of sum up where I see you in the space right now. So it's not 2018. Mm-hmm. You would not see a Google post, once again, regardless of where people feel about the Ukraine policy itself, post-Ukraine, you would not see major tech companies refuse to work at the U.S. military to the degree with which they did during the 2010s. That's largely because I think most just normie folks saw everything the U.S. military does through the lens of our long, unsettled debate about like Iraq and Afghanistan and the legacy thereof. Now, clearly, I think a lot of these debates, pro or con, are rooted in a world where things are actually happening. It doesn't just sound like when people talk about how Iran, Russia, North Korea, and China are oftentimes working together against American interests, that does not, elicit the eye roll, the axis of evil speech elicited in 2003. So the stakes are real now. So we're past 2018. You've just had this big summit. 110 venture, VCs are there. Actually, quick question on that. I know we're kind of jumping all over the place, but are there 110 companies worth funding? When you said that number, that was an instant kind of problem I kind of ran into. I'm like, oh, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think how would
I framed it unfair.
No, you didn't. I'm just trying to like what what are the what should I give away right now or not?
Let me put it a better way. Are there 110 problems that 100%. Startups can disrupt and
Absolutely,
solve?
100%. Yeah, and I think because
that's different than companies formation.
Yeah. No, you think about the so one of the reasons why there's this movement, VC towards defense. It's an investable category. All of a sudden it wasn't, just even 2 years ago. Obviously, current events has a lot to do with it. The other thing is like the exit environment has sucked in the defense sector. If you got your primes are, on the cost plus contracting and they're, only valued at 1 to 2x revenue, like they can't acquire, startups, not even at software margins, like at a 5x multiple, they're immediately going to get punished by the public market. And so, it's pretty easy to see, okay, Anduril will make it, Epirus will make it, Shield will make it. And now these are companies that to achieve the scale and breadth that they need to become primes, software first, software enabled, fixed price contract companies. They're going to have to do a lot of acquisitions to get there. And you already see the strategy starting to play out. I think what you'll hear from some of the, I don't speak for any of those companies, but I have heard them talking about stuff like this, is like you see a lot of, founders and VCs backing companies where it's like, it's the 55th company in this problem area. It's the 85th company. It's the, and there's this is where embedded military expertise can actually help you out, because there's actually this enormous amount of like spending priorities where, low margin services can be translated into high margin software. And it's like, the market both expands and contracts at the same time, because now the taxpayer's paying less money, and so, the TAM, as you get more and more, services translated into software, maybe that, contracts a little bit. But you have this huge space for, just look at all of the different, it's something I'm going to butcher it, but it's like 70 or 80 like this, the services TAM in the world, or sort of the defense sector, like it 10x is the software TAM right now, and that's going to change. Yeah. And I think that's why like VCs are interested in the sector, is like it's if a $2 trillion market shifts 10% towards software over services, that's the same size as the global enterprise SaaS market. And so it's like, it's really big. But you want to see, a lot of the companies that, could get acquired. There's actually, there are not hundreds, there are thousands of companies that need to be started in defense, but they're not all going to be
unicorns.
Yeah. They're not going to be $1 to $10 billion outcomes, but, 50 million, 100 million, a couple hundred million, like that's going to happen a lot if they're like attacking the right problem and they're going after the thing that's, it's services that can be translated into software.
So to actually close the last question then, I would say my takeaway from your conference is, and Twitter, X, the vibes are good. People are excited. There's energy. It's now let's perform. The stakes are there. What do the next 2 years look like if the category that you're describing is going to perform well? Like, what metrics, to the earlier point of the conversation, like what should outsiders looking in like me really know are like, okay, like X companies were funded, Y number of, X DOD are placed in companies. Like, how should we just measure what we're trying to aim for?
I think, I'll come back to this on there's two things that like definitely have to exist. Like, it has to be like a whole lot easier to like run software on DoD systems, on government systems than it is today. Like it's like, impossibly hard to, or impossibly expensive or impossibly long. And so, it has to be really easy to just satisfy, IL5, IL6, these different requirements to run on systems. That has to exist. And then there has to be this glue where embedded military expertise is going here, technology expertise is going there. I didn't know that I necessarily was like signing up to build a massive community business, a network. But those I'm actually super bullish on community and networks in the face of like how fast technology is moving right now, because you look at the AI companies that are really taking, they're trying to accelerate, but they're taking, they're taking precautions. Like, they're working together. Like when things are existential, you work together to make sure you get it right. Like it, it should always be that way in defense. Like we should always work together to get things right. And so I think we have to see both it easier to run software and easier for the two worlds to understand each other. They actually need each other. I think we finally remember that.
I think that is a great place to end. Mike, thank you so much for joining me on the
Marshall.
Realignment at RNDF.
Thank you, Marshall. Really appreciate you.